All the young people who've come this evening. It's something that we haven't seen before. Thank you so much. My name is Mark McCandlish, and I worked for 30 years in the aerospace and defense industry as an illustrator, conceptual artist, and a designer. A lot of the projects that I worked on required that I had to be able to cross different fields of endeavor, from material science to engineering to physics. So naturally, when these things started happening in the sky, and many of the defense contractors and aerospace companies that I work for design and build aircraft like Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Rockwell, I began to become curious about what was going on. I was skeptical at first. I honestly didn't believe there was anything to the idea of chemtrails. Then around 2001, there was a headline in the newspaper. Now, this headline came 2 days after a sequence of heavy spraying over the Reading area, and I noticed the trails were persisting for most of the day. And that headline said, "Area hospitals report dozens of patients claiming respiratory distress." And that's when I began to suspect that there was something going on. So I began using the internet, like probably many of you have, and I began looking for what the materials were that were being used and why. Now, there's an awful lot of technical material behind what you're seeing. For one thing, these particles, these nanoparticles that are being put into the air, not only help to shield the ground from the sun and block and reflect the sunlight, which can change the temperature of the air mass below that, make it cooler, make it come together and compress, but it can also be bombarded with microwave radiation from the ground. And if you match the frequency of these particles in just the right way, these particles will begin to heat up in the air, and that heat is transferred to the surrounding air mass. Now, it only has to be a mild amount of heat. It could be 135 degrees. But if you have countless, trillions of these particles suspended in the air that are all being painted with this signal, they will all heat up at the same time, and they will carry that air mass and all the moisture that's in it to a higher altitude where it will condense and become a powerful low-pressure system. Now, people question whether it's possible to manipulate the weather, to steer the jet stream. You have to remember that when you put a coating over a surface and it cools down the air mass below that, the air comes together, it condenses. When you heat up the air mass, it rises and expands. And so by controlling where and when these events occur, you can actually control the flow of the jet stream. A few years ago, it was discovered that the amount of snow that fell in the Himalayas near Mount Everest would actually control where the jet stream went over the course of the following year. And that's just one location on the planet. But if you have thousands upon thousands of planes spraying this material in different regions around the world, all at the same time, you can just imagine the amount of chaos that this will throw into the weather system for the entire planet. Now, the other side of this, of course, is the toxicology, the toxic effects that these materials have. Now, if this ball right here was a red blood cell, something you can't even see without a microscope, you could line 50 of these particles up next to a single red blood cell. That's how tiny they are. They can be absorbed right through the skin, and of course, there's almost no filtration system that you can wear that will prevent these things from being introduced into your body during respiration. It was an Air Force study, a United States Air Force study that was conducted between 1993 and 2001. It was called In Vitro Toxicity of Aluminum Nanoparticles in Rat Alveolar Macrophages. Sounds real technical, but all it says is aluminum nanoparticles have a toxic effect on the white blood cells, part of your immune system that exists right in your lungs, in the alveoli, the little air sacs that expand and contract when you breathe. Okay, this is your first line of defense against infection. So if you are able to suppress the activity of the immune system in the lungs, it means that anything else you put into the air, it'll go right into your system without your being able to defend against it. This is why it is so serious, not just at a toxic level, but as an epidemiological situation in terms of infection. And with this scare that we're having now about Ebola, you can just imagine what might happen if the wrong material gets sprayed in the air.
Greetings, I am Francis Wayne Mangels. I live in Mount Shasta. Qualifications first and then a little bit. Bachelor of Science with Honors, International School of Forestry at Missoula. Master of Science Zoology, Montana State University. Psi Sigma Pi Scholarship in Community Service. California Community Colleges credential. How about that? Mensa International. And the next step that's a magnitude above that, Intertel. God dang. Yeah, I'm 10 times as good as a Mensa. How about that? But the thing I want to tell you about is I'd like you to, I've got data about biology. I've got some observations here about stuff we've actually seen and have proven. There's another website out there by John White where I debunk the debunkers, the people who told me it was BS. But there's about 90 points on here that the debunkers haven't been able to touch for about 6 or 7 years. So I think this data here is going to stand. And you're free to ask me anything in the realm of biology, natural sciences, range, wildlife, and some of the stuff I'm seeing is pretty disheartening. Now, I'd like to get on to some of the people that got questions here now, so I'm cutting this a little bit short, but I hope you got good questions, because by golly, we sure have answers up here.
I had a conversation with a geoengineer over in the United Kingdom, and he told me when I began to discuss chemtrails, he said, I'm a scientist, that's bunk, and the only way you're going to show that to me was one of two ways. He said, you're going to either capture the cloud and break it down to its elements, or he said you can use what's called spectrum analysis. And basically there are units that you can stand on the ground, and they can, I guess it's a laser device, they can see into it, and they use this to see atmospheres and other planets. And basically, you can see what those elements are of the chemtrail. My question is, as scientists, how does that sound?
Yes, it's possible to do a spectrum analysis of the particles that are in the air. There are also aircraft that can fly through those clouds and make a collection of samples, which can then be analyzed in a mass spectrometer, which is it's kind of like a laser that vaporizes anything that's in the collected sample. And each of those particular elements will show up in a particular, it's like a rainbow scan, and it'll produce spikes wherever there is a particular color that's produced by each of the unique elements that are in it. Yes, yes it would.
Obviously, we got to stay strong in this, because this is going to be a longer battle. What's your best guess of homespun trying to clean up this air for our, in the car and also at home? What's your best guess at cleaning up this air so we stay a little healthier? Thanks.
Short answer, there is no filter that we know of that's going to take out a particle that's 1/1000th of a meter in size. So you're stuck with breathing it. This stuff shows up in the water. We have a rain sample right in front of me right here. No, you can't filter it out of water either. There's no way to get 1/1000th of a meter particle out of there. By the way, smoke, cigarette smoke is 1/1,000,000th of a meter, and we're dealing with something that's 1,000 times smaller than a particle of tobacco smoke.
So in the process of being stuck, going back to it, you must create a daily awareness of detoxing, that your body will remove it. Your body has been given God-given abilities to remove these toxins. Magnesium as an element, 2 elements of magnesium will remove 1 aluminum. So you must, everybody is magnesium deficient. You must increase that. Other things as well. As your body discharges out the toxins, particularly aluminum, heavy metals, mercury, etc., it's in your colon. The last first 2/3 of your colon's job is to reabsorb what it is. Your body has this tremendous ability to recycle. You got to block the recycling mechanisms on metals. Chlorella and other algae will do that. So there's more on that.
There is something else that we should be aware of, and that is that anytime you're spraying chemicals over populated areas, it starts to fall into the purview of Title 50 United States Code, which is the statutes regarding chemical and biological warfare. Now, there are sections in Chapter 32 of Title 50 where it talks about exceptions to this prohibition of spraying over populated areas. There has to be a presidential directive in writing. There has to be notice given to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. There has to be a written notice given to each governor in each state where the spraying is anticipated to occur. So this means that there is a paper trail. There must be. If you are familiar with OSHA, if any of you work in a blue-collar job, you know about the Occupational Safety and Hazards Administration. Look up the Material Data Safety Sheet for aluminum oxide nanoparticles. It says very clearly on that sheet, should never be distributed into the